Let's talk some more college football here on Easter Sunday. Happy Easter, everyone. He is risen. I hope you guys are having an amazing Easter Sunday. We're heading back into some college football early season predictions videos. I have done all the SEC ones. If you want to watch those, there is a playlist on our channel. Those are amazing videos if you want to see the setup and how teams are expected to do this year and go through a little bit of a breakthrough for each and every SEC team. Definitely go check those out. But I also wanted to do this for some other college football teams because, yes, I'm a huge SEC guy, but I also love to look around the league, look around the Power 5 specifically, and just look at what teams are really growing. So there's a couple teams in mind that I want to do these videos for, but I thought that there's no better way to start because there's no team in college football that I am most excited for this season than the Oklahoma Sooners outside of SEC teams. Obviously, I'm a big Gamecocks fan. I'm going to be most excited about the Gamecocks period, but this Oklahoma Sooners team is definitely a team that I'm going to have to follow all season because they are in a win now mode. If you want to win a national championship, I say in the next 5 years for the Oklahoma Sooners, this is your season. You have the experience, you have the talent to win now. Get Lincoln Riley his first national championship, and Norman will go insane. Oklahoma fans, do me a favor, do yourself a favor. It would be greatly appreciated on my part if you dropped a like on this video, and then also subscribe if you love college football content because we have tons of college football content on this channel. We talk all about sports, especially football, so if you are a big football fan as I am, definitely hit that sub button and hit the like button. So the plan for this video and what these videos are and what I've been doing, if you haven't watched these before, we're going to go through a schedule breakdown. Then we're going to break down some of the players that we got on this team and then finish up with wins, toss-ups, and losses, and then go through projected records and everything like that. Packed videos. These videos are always long, always full of information. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this one because this is going to be an amazing one. And before we get started into talking about how the Oklahoma Sooners will do this season, we got to talk about how the Oklahoma Sooners did last year because if you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, I think if you're any college football fan, you know that it was a tale of two tales for the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's talk about the back end first. Let's start off with the positive because honestly, I look at the back end of this Oklahoma Sooners team in 2020. This was a playoff team. There's no doubt in my mind, I would have bet serious money that this Oklahoma Sooners team would have killed the Notre Dame team that we saw in the playoffs that took on Alabama and got smacked by them and that got smacked by Clemson in the ACC championship game. I think you put Oklahoma and Texas A&M against each other as like a 4-5 matchup, something like that, and you would have had a really, really good matchup to determine who gets into the playoffs if that was a thing where you decide two teams to play for that last playoff spot. I think that that's an idea that I've wanted to do for forever where you just had the 4 and 5 team play for that last playoff spot. But I think Oklahoma was a playoff team. It's just you could not put them in because of how bad they were at the beginning of the season. And Oklahoma fans will be honest and say it was not a great start. It's just inexperience on a lot of players' parts for this Oklahoma team. But you had the talent on that team. You had the roster to be good. And that's what happens when you build on later in the season. Those guys get experience, and then you go out and you look like a good football team. The beginning of the season, obviously, the loss to Kansas State and then the loss to Iowa State. It was just inexperience. I think on Spencer Rattler's part, yes, it was his sophomore season technically, but you got to look at it. He's basically a freshman. It was his first year ever playing. He played a whole season under Jalen Hurts, barely saw any field time, and when you go straight into Big 12 play, you have to score fast, and you have to score a lot in Big 12. So throwing him in there, you knew he was going to be good, but expecting him to be at Heisman level straight out of the gate, straight out in the first 4 games was going to be a bit of a stretch. So you lose those 2 games, but then after that, you go into the Texas game, which was a 4 overtime thriller, win that 53-45. You go into those games, you start getting more experience, and then you run the rest of the table with the Big 12, go on, win the Big 12 championship, and then head to the Cotton Bowl to take on the Florida Gators. And I'm going to be honest, if you watched my post-game of this video, I put my hand up, and I honestly said, Oklahoma fans, I owe you guys an apology because I picked Florida to absolutely kill Oklahoma in this game. And I knew that Kyle Pitts was out. I knew that Kadarius Toney was out. I knew that Trevon Grimes was out. I knew Copeland was out. I knew all of those receivers were out. And yet I still went with the Florida Gators. And that's when I started to really take the Oklahoma Sooners seriously because I'd seen them only go up against Big 12 competition until that point and see them play a really good SEC team. Even though they had all those key weapons out, Florida was still a really good team. And I think what surprised me most, I knew Oklahoma will always have a good offense. It's like you'll see pigs flying in the sky the day that Oklahoma doesn't have a good offense. It was the defensive play from Oklahoma that really, really caught my eye in that game and really, really has me confident in the ability for Oklahoma to go play with the biggest and the baddest this season and compete for a college football national championship. Not only make the playoffs, because making the playoffs and having a chance at that college football national championship are two very different things. So you take that with like Notre Dame this season. Yes, they made the playoffs, but did they really have a chance to win the college football national championship? Not really. This Oklahoma team can get to that point. They can be in the national championship game and give whoever they are playing a serious scare and probably even go into this game being favorites. But that's what we're going to break down. So before we get into talking about the players, we of course have to break down the schedule for the Oklahoma Sooners this season. I look at the schedule, and the first thing that catches my eye is that you have an away game, the first game in Tulane for Oklahoma. That just shocked me straight out of the gates. I know it's because you're playing a group of 5 team away. Usually doesn't happen, especially for a big program in Oklahoma, but you know what? Can't complain there. Tulane, then you go at home September 11th to take on the West Carolina Catamounts. Then you got Nebraska in a Big 12, Big 10 matchup on the 18th. You're still at home against West Virginia on the 25th. Then you got Kansas State. You're going to Kansas State on the 2nd, October the 2nd. Can the streak against Kansas State end is going to be the main question there. Then on the 9th, October 9th, you got the big rivalry game in the Cotton Bowl, the Red River rivalry. Texas takes on Oklahoma. Should be a great game there. October 16th, you're back home against TCU. Then you travel to Kansas on the 23rd. Still in October on the 30th, you got Texas Tech. Then on November 6th, you got your bye. Going on to the 13th, you got Baylor in McLean Stadium in Baylor. Then you come home to take on Iowa State, which I think is the key out of all the away and home games that Oklahoma has set up here. That Iowa State game, getting that at home is the most key outplay of this whole schedule. So that is absolutely key for them. They play them on the 20th, and then you finish up in Oklahoma State on the 27th for your big rivalry game there. And then I throw this in for every single team, but I do think that this is not even a possibility, but a favorite for this to happen. Oklahoma making the Big 12 championship on December the 4th. So that is the breakdown of the schedule so far. That's just the schedule straight up. We're going to talk about some players now and then get into kind of breaking down each game, wins, toss-ups, and losses, breaking those down into categories and then projected records and everything. So let's talk about this Oklahoma Sooners team because they lose some guys this season. You look at Ramondre Stevenson, running back, obviously one of your better running backs. Charleston Rambo, you lose him to the transfer portal, and then to the draft, Ronnie Perkins, Trey Brown, and Adrian Ely, a big factor on your O-line. So you lose some offensive weapons, you lose some big defensive weapons, but I still think the core of this Oklahoma team is still here, and that's why I feel really good about where this Oklahoma Sooners team is at going into the season. Quarterback position, you have Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler is going to be your guy. If it's anyone else, it's going to be Caleb Williams, which we're going to talk about the recruiting class a bit later, but Spencer Rattler is going to be your guy for all of the season. I can almost guarantee that Spencer Rattler is your guy. If he's healthy, he will be your guy the whole season. Then you go into the running back position, and this is where I really start to like this Oklahoma team because you have a good quarterback, you need running backs to match up with that. Kennedy Brooks, and now Eric Gray out of Tennessee. Eric Gray out of Tennessee was an unbelievable player at Tennessee. Trust me, I watched Tennessee a lot last season. He was one of the most, if not the most electric player on that team. Not to mention Kennedy Brooks. You batch up those two guys in the Oklahoma backfield, and you already have a really, really good base of an offense there. Then you go down to the wide receiver position, and the standout guy is obvious. The young pair that we had last year in Spencer Rattler and Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims is one of the best players in all of college football at the wide receiver position. Amazing player there. And then you still got Jason Hasselwood and Trajan Bridges. And then you look at the tight end position and you got Stogner there. And then the O-line is very, very good. This O-line is a very solid O-line. They're returning a lot of experience on that O-line, which is going to be absolutely huge. Of course, losing Ely on the O-line, it hurts. It's not what you want, but I still think you remain with the core of this Oklahoma offensive line. And Wanya Morris from Tennessee, again, they hit that Tennessee recruiting portal or the transfer portal so hard. He's going to be your best offensive lineman, and he is going to dominate. He's going to be probably a first-round pick, second-round pick, somewhere around there in the NFL draft next year. Now going down to the defensive side of the ball. On the D-line, you got Isaiah Thomas, Jerron Winfrey, and then Jalen Redmond there. 3 big guys up there, and then you look at Nick Benito on the outside linebacker position as your edge rusher. He is going to be a key factor in that offense, getting to the quarterback, one of the fastest guys that you have on your defense. He needs to go out, have a big season, and I do feel like he is one of the more elite players on this defense. Then you go into the linebackers with David Ugwobo, that always screws me up. That name is so hard to say. And then you got Brian Asamoah on that linebacker room. And then you finish up with the secondary. You got DJ Graham, Woody Washington, Brendan Radley Hiles, Justin Harrington, and then Delaren Yell Turner there. Again, the defense is what really shocked me last year, especially with the secondary. The secondary was really good against Kyle Trask. Now, you could say Kyle Trask had a terrible game in that Cotton Bowl against against Oklahoma, but I still think at least half of that was due to just how good Oklahoma's secondary was playing on the receivers and everything. So that is the breakdown of all the players offensively and defensively I think will be key factors for Oklahoma this season. Now going on into the recruiting classes for the Oklahoma Sooners here in 2021. I think they finished 11th in the country. 1 5-star, and then you got a bunch of 4-stars. And obviously that 1 5-star being Caleb Williams, the best dual threat quarterback in the nation coming out of the 2021 class. It's good that once Spencer Rattler leaves, basically after this season, it's almost a guarantee that he will be gone after this season. He's probably going to be the first overall pick to the NFL draft to whoever needs a quarterback, him or Sam Howell probably. You're going to have a 5-star right under him. So get him to learn from Spencer Rattler, and you're going to have a pretty good setup at quarterback position for the next couple years for the Oklahoma Sooners. Next, you bring in Clayton Smith, and you look at Mario Williams. This team, you just look at just go on 24/7 and scroll through all the athletes that you bring on in this Oklahoma recruiting class. Just all highly recruited guys, all athletes, all main, what do you want to call it, power positions or skill positions on both sides of the football, which I think is absolutely huge for the Oklahoma Sooners. After we break down the players, let's get into the wins, losses, and tosses, because this is always the best part of the video. This is always the part of the video that you guys always look forward to, and this is what turns the most heads. Now, I always say, please take what I had to say into consideration. Don't just take the graphic for what it is, because I have percentages at the bottom. That is my win confidence for each one of these games. So you see wins there. I will have anywhere from 75 to 100% win confidence in Oklahoma winning. Toss-ups is anywhere from 26 to 74, and then losses is anywhere from 25 to 0. You see nothing in the losses for Oklahoma. So I think as an Oklahoma fan, you're feeling pretty good at this point. First, let's break down the wins, because the toss-ups is what's going to be the most interesting part, and we'll obviously save that for last. But we look at Tulane. I think Tulane, even though you travel down to New Orleans, I think that should be a win. You're playing a group of 5 team, and you're one of the most elite teams in all of college football. West Carolina should be a win. Nebraska, they honestly started out decent last year. In the couple games I watched them in Big Ten play, especially against Ohio State, I still think that they're not going to be anything, especially traveling to Oklahoma. I don't think that they're going to be anything to keep Oklahoma up at night and be like, this is going to be one of the biggest games of the season. But again, trap games is something that has screwed Oklahoma in the past, and we got to look at all these wins and pick out which game is going to be the trap game and which game should Oklahoma be alert for. West Virginia. West Virginia is one of my more favorite teams. I love West Virginia, but I still think that that's going to be a win. Kansas State, even though I have that as a win, it has been the trap game the last couple of years for Oklahoma. So Oklahoma's going to really want to pay attention to that. You do go to Kansas State for that game. TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Baylor, and then Oklahoma State could be on the cusp of that wins and toss-ups category, but I honestly think that Oklahoma State should be an easy win for Oklahoma next year. I thought Oklahoma State was overrated last season, and then it showed towards the end of the season that Oklahoma State wasn't a top 5 team in the country, and they're just true color shows. If you look at a trap game in this scenario, I think you've lost to Kansas State enough in the last couple of years that you're going to have your guys prepared no matter what, and you're not going to allow that to be a trap game. So I'd mark that off the board. If I'm looking at a trap game, I'm looking at that Nebraska game, and I'm looking at that Baylor game, because Baylor game, you go and play that away, and that's been a team that has been able to play you close the last couple of years. And then Nebraska, you're playing an out-of-conference team. You have no clue what Nebraska is going to be like coming in this year. They're always a team that you can never figure out, and you get them early in the season when Oklahoma usually makes the most of their mistakes. So that is going to be the trap games. I think you got Tulane and West Carolina, but your first real challenge is going to be that Nebraska game at home. Let's talk about this toss-ups category because I want to give you guys my percentages of each of these games first. I do think Oklahoma is definitely going to be favored in both of these games, just starting off, but it is not enough to say that Oklahoma will guaranteed beat the Iowa State Cyclones and guaranteed that the Oklahoma State Sooners will beat the Texas Longhorns. Let's start off talking with Iowa State because we'll save the rival Texas Longhorns for last. Iowa State, their offense is going to be one of the most high-powered offenses in all of college football this year. You have the best running back in the nation in Breece Hall. You have Brock Purdy coming back. Even though Brock Purdy looked kind of shaky at points last season, it's always good to have an experienced quarterback back there. Iowa State was a win away from a playoff spot probably. If they win that Big 12 championship, you start to see them in contention for that spot with Notre Dame. And hopefully, I'm hoping that the committee would have put them in because I didn't want to see Notre Dame in there, even though the committee probably would have put Notre Dame anyways. Iowa State's going to be a really good team this year. And if you watched my early college football playoff predictions, which if you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, I highly suggest you watch that video because you're really going to like it. Just a little bit of a hint there. I ranked the Iowa State Cyclones as the 6th team in the nation right now. So Iowa State is a team I'm really high on. And then the Texas Longhorns. Texas Longhorns is also a team with a really, really, really good running back in Bijan Robinson. He's going to be one of the best in all the country this year. And you always play good games against Texas. It's in a neutral site. Yes, I do think Oklahoma's way better of a team than Texas this year, although I am high on Texas also this season, but you can never count out the Texas Longhorns in a big rivalry game like this, especially with the talent they have this year. They're bringing in a new quarterback in Thompson, but still, that's not a game that you want to write off the board as a win, especially as a big rivalry game. But I do think that both those games are going to be wins for the Oklahoma Sooners, and I do have them both favored in that game, but it's not enough for me to call them wins. Projected records and everything now, I think, honestly, you look at projected record, I look at these 12 games that we have right here, and I see a 12-0 season, 11-1. Realistic scenario, 12-0, 11-1 for the Oklahoma Sooners. I say worst case scenario, I'm going to go 9-3. You drop one of your wins, which is going to be a trap game, and then you lose both of your toss-ups. That's going to be the worst case scenario for Oklahoma. And then best case scenario, it's obvious. You go undefeated, 12-0. You make the Big 12 championship. You win that. You go on to the playoff, and then hopefully you match up well against Alabama. I think that, honestly, Oklahoma will match up well against Clemson this season if they get them. Oklahoma will play a good game against, who else is there? Ohio State this season. The two teams that I see giving Alabama a run for their money this year, obviously you're going to have Clemson and Ohio State up there, but I honestly believe Oklahoma and Georgia are two teams that could be capable just because of the amount of experience that they have on that team and the amount of depth that they have on both sides of the ball, could be teams to give Alabama a scare in that playoff scenario. So that is my video for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, I'd really appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video because these videos do take a lot of time and effort to put into. Comment anything about what you think the Oklahoma Sooners will go into this year, what record they'll come out with. Like the video, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and definitely come back next time and Boomer Sooner.